Wanda, nice to meet you guys.
Nice to
We
meet
have
you.
here Aubrey, Bridget, and Samantha are here. Okay, so I'm gonna turn the camera around so we can get started. You have I just did a sample before, just so I could figure out the easiest way for you guys to do it. So it'll end up looking something like this. This is the mask part of it with our elastic, and then this is the scarf part of it. For fabric, I have some interfacing, you know, the fusible webbing that we used before. You either iron it on or sew it on. We have that, and then some elastic. So I have a whole row here. So you need some, this I think is about 1/8 of an inch. So if you have something that's like 1/4 of an inch, it's fine. You could probably even use, I would say maybe 1/2 of an inch. It's just that if it's thinner, it's more comfortable behind your ears. Okay, here's one thing I added after class that I noticed. When you are laying it out, make sure you lay it out correctly. So you want to fold your fabric in half. It comes this way from the fabric store, folded. So your folded edge is here, and then your selvages are up here. This is the way it looks from the fabric store. You have your straight edges up here. You should have 2 edges here, and then your folded edge here, and then it's cut here. So you want to lay it out this way. And so with 1/2 of a yard of fabric, you know, that's 18 inches. So 1/2 of a yard ends right here for you. So 18 inches is here for me. And so when you cut out your mask portion of it, so I want to lay my mask out up here closer to the selvage where the 2 edges are. So if I have my mask that is, this one is 8 inches by 9 inches. So 8 inches wide and 9 inches high, because depending upon the kid, you might need, or if it's for yourself, you might need it to be a little wider. For kids, 8 inches wide to about 8.5 inches seems to be okay. It just depends on how old the child is. Okay, so your mask, you want to cut it out over here, your 2 pieces. So whether you're cutting out 8.5 inches wide or 8 inches wide, or if it's for an adult, you know, maybe 9 inches wide, and then it's 9 inches high. So you want to make sure you're cutting your mask out up here so you have this left for your scarf. And so for our scarf, we would just be going from this 18-inch mark here, the entire length of our fabric, and then we would cut diagonally up to this corner. So it would start here, put a mark in there. So our scarf would be cut like this. Our 18 inches here, and then you cut diagonally up to that corner. And that's our scarf. And you can see why you need that extra. You need to put your mask over there so that you have this whole section left to cut your scarf. You need 2 pieces, cut it a little bit. So 8.5 inches wide by 9 inches high. Because the first one I did was 8 inches and I thought it was a little tight. So just add an extra 1/2 inch. Let me show you the difference. You need 2 pieces, 8.5 inches wide and then 9 inches high. Piece to fit like one side of this. And so I normally cut it a little bit smaller. So say, is yours iron-on or sew-on?
Both. No, it's iron-on.
We've been using it as sew though.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're gonna use it as sew-on, cut it the same size. You just need 1 piece to put on one side of this. If it were iron-on, I would say cut it a little bit smaller, but if it's sew-on, just do it the same and we'll trim it if we need to. I have iron-on interfacing, so I cut it the same size as your mask. So 8.5 by 9. And then we would, like mine is iron-on, so I'm gonna go iron it to the wrong side of my fabric. So if you're doing that, make sure you put it on the wrong side. If it's sew-on, once I finish this, I'll show you. We're just gonna sew it onto your one side of your mask. Okay, we're gonna cut out the scarf section. Okay, so we should have this. This is your mask. I'm gonna set this aside with my elastic. Okay, so for the scarf section of it, Just to make this easy, like if you open, do you have fabric? Your fabric should be 45 inches wide if you have cotton fabric. I'm going to show you just an easy way to cut out this triangle. Fold your fabric in half. You're going to use this whole width. So if you fold it in half, like here's my fold here, and then my selvages are up here, the two ends of the fabric. I just folded in half. So the selvages let you know you have it laid out the correct way, like lengthwise versus crosswise. Mine is, so I'm just trimming it. Okay. So if I have that, it's just a quick way to, all we're going to do is basically cut across to create a triangle. And so for the ones I did, I measured down from my top edge here down 12 inches. So from my top edge down here, I just measured 12 inches. And then you just want to go from that mark and cut to this corner here. And that's going to help, that's going to create a triangle. And it'll probably end up being a little bit too long, but it's okay. You just tie it and it hangs a little bit more. It's just, this is an easier way to do it. So measure down 12 inches or 14 inches, depending on how long you want your scarf. You figure it's the scarf in the front that's going to hang. So I did, for the ones I was doing, I did 12 inches. So then I would cut this diagonal line here from here down. So either go down 12 inches, 14 inches. So my 12 inch is here. So say if I start cutting like just below it, I'm just cutting at an angle, cutting diagonally back up to my corner so that I am creating a triangle.
Okay, because our fabric it's close to 45. It's like 40.
Yeah.
It's not quite 45.
Yeah, that's how mine is.
Okay.
And so, because if you look at it, like the one that I did before, it's like this. Okay. So it ends up being like this. It's about 12 inches from here to here. And then the width of this is 45, because by the time you get it around your neck and you tie it in the back,
Got it.
it really, yeah, it really isn't that long at all. So I did. So this is the cut edge of my fabric. I went down 12 inches. And so I just put a little mark there. So this would be, say if it's the one that I finished, right? This is it's just the bottom of my triangle here. That's what this is. So all we're doing is cutting out a triangle. And your fabric is already folded. So from here, from the edge of my fabric down is 12 inches. And then if my fabric is folded, my edge is over here. I just cut from this corner over to there, which is 12 inches. Cut that way. If yours is 14 inches, that's fine. And it doesn't even have, like, I think, Natasha, you were saying yours isn't quite as wide, because I believe you cut your mask maybe over here. It sounds like what you did. Say maybe this much left, maybe 30 inches. So you can do it that way. You can start here, have it folded, measure down 12 inches. You're just cutting from one corner over to your 12-inch mark. And depending on how thin your elastic is, you might need a hand needle and thread, because sometimes if it's really thin, if you do a couple stitches by hand to hold it in place before you sew it, that helps. Because if it's really thin, sometimes it gets stuck down in your sewing machine. All right, so the first thing we're going to do, take one of your mask sections. So I'm taking the one that has the interfacing on it, so that the interfacing is on the outside of it. Okay, and for right now, what you want to do, if you have a marking pen, I'm just going to use a little pencil because it'll be so little, I won't even see it. I want to fold it in half the long way because I just want to know where the center of it is. So I make sure my scarf is centered on that. So I'm folding my mask in half the long way. And I know I have a marking pencil here somewhere. I don't know, I'll just use a red pencil. So I'm just putting myself a little mark, or actually probably do a little cut here. So that little cut is the center of my mask. I just want to know where the center is. So everybody has the center point of their mask here at the bottom. So it's, for mine, it's 9 inches this way. This is the long way, because mine is 8.5 inches wide. So I'm folding it in half the long way. So it's 9 inches down. And then I fold it in half because I want to know where my center is. Okay. So we're going to be sewing this scarf to this first section of our mask. But we're not going to sew it all the way across. We want to stop 1 inch from the end. So take a ruler or something. You want to go from one end, and then that's 1 inch, like roughly an inch. If you go, oh, mine's 3/4, no big deal. So I'm saying from my mask is laid out like this, right? And this is just one section of my mask. So from this edge to here, I'm going to mark, okay, that's 1 inch. And then from my other edge, I'm going to go up 1 inch. And that's where I know that I'm going to start my stitching here. Start my stitching here, going to sew all the way over, and I'm going to stop here so that I have 1 inch on either side that's not sewn. Okay, so then what we want to do, you do the same, you just need to find the center of your scarf, the triangle that we made. So same thing, fold it in half, because you want to match up the centers. So if I fold my scarf in half, I know my center is right there. So for me, I'm just putting a little snip. So either do that or, you know, take a marking pen or something and do a little mark, you know, close to the edge so that, you know, that's your center of your scarf because you're matching this up with your mask. Okay, so can you see this?
Yes.
This is my end here. And then it, you know, goes like this. So you want it to look like this. So fold it in half and figure out where the center of your scarf is. And that's where you want to mark. Because sewing it to the mask. And so say like this one is already done. I found the center of my scarf here and I matched it up with the center of my mask. That's why we're finding the center. So that when you're wearing it, this point that's going to be on your scarf, you know, is centered and it's not like off to the side or anything. So it's looking like this. So you find the center point of your triangle and just put a mark up here. And then that's what we're sewing to the mask. Okay. So now once you find the center, I'm going to open my scarf section up and I'm just going to pin my mask to it. So I found the center of my mask. I'm going to match it up to the center of my scarf.
And
Okay, so just mark where the middle section of your scarf is. And just make sure you have it laid out so you have like the long triangle here and then it comes to a point here at the bottom. When you lay it on your table, you want to make sure it looks like this. Okay, so find the center of it and you're going to match it up with the center of your scarf, you know, with the right sides together. So it should look like this. So I have my scarf here, you know, this triangle section here. This is the center of my mask. And then I have it matched up with the center of my scarf here. See that? Here's the center of my mask. And then the center of my scarf is here. So I'm matching up those centers. And then what I'm going to do, my 1 inch is here because I don't want to just sew the whole thing on. I want to start 1 inch in. And so if I measure like from your mask over 1 inch, that's where I'm going to start sewing. And then same thing on the other side. I'm just going to stop 1 inch before the end. Look at where my pins are. That's where you're sewing. You're sewing your mask onto your scarf. You're going to start 1 inch from the edge, and then you're going to sew and stop 1 inch before the end, because that's where we put our mark. And then 1 inch from the beginning is where I have a mark. So I'm going to start sewing not at the very edge. I'm going to start here. So all the way. And then I'll stop right here. Okay, so I'm starting not at the edge. I'm starting at my mark here. Fantastic. And same thing, you want to take, I'm just sticking with 1 inch because it makes everything easier. So grab a ruler again. So now we're deciding on the placements for our elastic. So you're going to come down from each edge 1 inch, put yourself a little mark, on that side, and then you want to come down 1 inch on the other side and put yourself a little mark. And the marks that we're putting here is where we'll sew our elastic. Okay. And the elastic is sewn in 4 places. So you have 1 inch down here, 1 inch down here on either side. I put a mark. And then you want to go to the bottom. Okay. And then not the folded edge, you want the cut edge. So you see how I'm kind of moving it over so I can find, I'm using this edge as my 1 inch. So I'm going to come in from here, 1 inch, and that's where I'll sew the other end of my elastic. Make sense so far?
Yes.
Okay.
Yolanda, I sewed this.
Okay. All right. So
Now-
now we're doing the elastic.
Okay.
So just open it up so that you have the mask section of it. Wait, let me see your elastic. Was that your elastic in your hand? Yeah, that's two. Do you have thinner elastic?
Can I just
Because you
cut it
think
in half?
about it. Yeah, some elastic you can, some you can. It should be okay. Cut it like, not even in half. That's probably too thick. Because you think
Thirds.
about it, it's going behind your ears.
Where am I putting the elastic?
Wait, I'm going to show you. So cut it like thin enough for your ears, sure. So put a mark. So come down from the top edge, come down 1 inch and put a mark. We got that? Okay. And then at the bottom edge, you want to measure 1 inch from this bottom up 1 inch and put a mark. So our elastic would go, it's sewn in 4 places, here, here, and then on the other side, you come down 1 inch. That's where elastic goes. And then on the other side, like this is the bottom edge of my mask. I'm going to come in 1 inch. And I know that's another place for my elastic. Okay. And then our elastic, you want to put your elastic on. You want your cut edge on the edge of your fabric here. This is how we're going to sew it. And I would sew 1 piece at a time, 1 section at a time, because it's gonna, by the time you get down here, it's stretchy and it's too hard to do it. So we're gonna sew 1 step at a time. So I have my elastic at my first point. So let's sew that. And like I said,
At the
if your
top.
elastic is really thin, you might need to do a few hand stitches to hold it in place. If it's, problematic on your sewing machine. So just put your first piece of elastic on your 1 inch mark down here, and I have it on the edge of my fabric, the front of my fabric. Correct. You're doing it on the right side of your fabric. This is the front. Like we're sewing it like this is the front and this is our scarf. This is what we're sewing our elastic to, our front piece. You see that?
Yes.
Okay. So I just came down 1 inch from the top, and I have my elastic flush with the cut edge of my fabric. And I'm just going to do a little stitch close to the edge here. You just want to be close to the edge. So I did the first one. I just did my little stitch here. My elastic is close to my edge. And now I kind of want to stretch it out. Make sure your elastic is not twisted. 1 inch from my bottom cut edge is right here. So I'm going to sew that the same way I did the top. And then we do the same thing on the other side. So same thing, find your 1 inch mark, line your your elastic up with the edge of your fabric. And I'll put a pin. And like I said, just sew 1 piece at a time, as opposed to trying to pin both and do it, because it's going to be stretchy. Okay. Okay, just want to make sure my elastic is not twisted, and I'm going to move it down to my other mark here. Okay, so now already. You guys, we're going to take our other piece, this other piece we have, and basically you're going to sew this to your other mask, right sides together. So let me flip it over. Going to match up my edges here. And when you're sewing, just kind of feel for your elastic to make sure you're not, once you sew across, that your elastic is out of the way. So if I put a pin here, I'm going to feel for it and make sure my elastic across the top is out of the way. When I sew the sides, yes, I'll be sewing my elastic, but I don't want to sew it within this top here. So you should have it laid out like this on your table. Your elastic should be on each edge, each end of it. And then you want to take your other piece of mask and it goes that way. And we're sewing, basically, this is the other side of our mask that we're sewing on. So we'll just be sewing up here on 3 sides, here, across, and down. But what I'm saying is when you're sewing across, you just want to feel for your elastic and make sure you're not sewing your elastic within your top stitch. On the side, yes, it will include your elastic. And you're going to have to kind of push it out of the way, when you're sewing. So just kind of be aware of that.
So we're just sewing the top and the 2 sides?
Wait,
Yeah, and so
Oh, and
What
then
is-
we sew it out.
do I
Okay.
want to have the part that's the elastic that's sewn on? Do I want to have that sewn to the other side?
okay, let me show
Like
you. So if
little-
I'm pinning mine like this, right? So we're going to sew across the top. And what I'm saying is as you're sewing, just make sure your elastic probably will be out of the way because it's stretched. So if you want to, just sew the top for right now. Let's just do that. So pin it and we're going to sew across the top portion for right now.
What if our elastic is like this though?
It's supposed to be. Lay it out like I said, lay it out, right? Lay it out like this. And so pin your other mask section, your other portion to that. And we're just going to sew across the top edge of it. Okay. So let's do that for now. We'll do one step at a time. Okay, so now you should have just the top portion of your mask sewn. So it looks like this. Now you want to sew, you're sewing the side. So lay it out so that you're looking at looking at it like this. You have your mask that has the elastic on it. And you have your scarf. And then you have your other piece here that we sewed across the top, just fold it down. And then we're just sewing the sides here. So I'm just going to push my elastic out of the way because I just want to sew it on the side here. I want to make sure don't get my elastic caught up down here. So I'm pushing it over. So I make sure it's in that seam and I'll put myself a pin there to hold it for me. So turn it like you want it with, like this, so that the edge of your elastic is on the edge of your fabric here. So I am just pinning this so that I can sew the sides of my mask. Okay, and I'm coming all the way down to the edge of the mask here. So just make sure you're not sewing your scarf. We're only sewing the mask right now. One side. And I'm just filling for my elastic to make sure it is out of my way. Let me finish this up really quickly. Move my elastic. Okay, and you're going to go all the way down on your. Okay, so once you have all 3 sides sewn, like Shira was saying, the only side that isn't sewn is the part by the scarf. That's the part that we still have open. So I'm just going to take my scissors and I want to trim this because we're going to end up having to do pleats here and we don't want all this excess fabric. So I'm going to take my scissors and trim it so that I have a narrow seam allowance. Okay, and then turn it to the right hand side or the right side. There are no hands here. Okay. So it should look like this at this point. Then we're going to turn it over so that you're looking at the wrong side of your scarf. Okay, so once you have your seam allowance folded into your mask, I just put some pins there, sewing close to the edge on my mask. I'm just going to do that for now. Just sew across the edge here.
Okay, so
See, like, let me move this. So see, like here where I put just a little clip here, so that I can then take these edges and fold them up into my mask. Like that. Well, right now, yeah, you're looking at the wrong side of your scarf, and then your mask, it's the side where your mouth would be. Because now you should have two right sides of your fabric, but this is the inside of your mask. So we have our mask. We should have our mask sewn to our scarf on the inside. Now we just need to sew these raw edges of our scarf. So to do that, it's just a narrow hem. You could, like I said, go to the ironing board and turn your hem in and press it. I am just going to do it with my fingers. So if I know I want it like that, I'm just going to fold in the raw edges. And I'm having a narrow hem. Okay, so you just turn in your raw edges and turn them in again. So all the way down to this corner and then stop and took it out and then start it again. Like, don't try to go, then turn the corner and all of that, because it ends up getting stuck in your machine. So just start and sew all the way here and stop, and then do the same thing. Turn it in like that, and then sew the other way, and just keep going. Okay, so to do our pleats, so it should look like this now. So I'm really just estimating the top here. So that's where I'll start my pleat. And then I'm just folding this. You just fold it down and to create a pleat for you. Basically, you think about your fabric is folded like this. Should look like this. And then you just fold it over and we would sew on the edge here. And I'm gonna pin it first just to kind of see what it looks like and make sure my pleats are evenly placed. So I usually start with the top and I'll do the bottom and then adjust it from there. So all it is, you're just folding the fabric. Yeah, and I don't want my pleats to overlap. And so I can see here the way I have it, they would overlap some. So I'm just gonna adjust it a little bit. Okay, so I have my fabric folded so that I have pleats on one side here. And then I'm just gonna fold the other side to look like this side. My pleats on one side, just gonna fold my other side to match it. Okay, so once you have your pleats pinned into place, you're just gonna sew along the edge here. So let's see, I have pins here, so I'm just gonna sew close to the edge. And make sure your elastic is out of the way. And it's kind of thick here, so you may have to kind of push it through a little bit with your fingers. Do a back stitch. Okay, so that's one side the pleats are in. And so I'll sew the other side. Okay, so I think we are all set. Thank you guys for coming to class. All right, have a good weekend.
All right, bye-bye.